Hey guys, Scott here. So I've been playing Chaos Shuffle, by far my favorite game mode, and I kind of realized something this iteration of it, and it's not something like, wow, there's a lot of bad perks. Like, we all realized that the very first Chaos Shuffle, but I realized something a bit more about perks themselves that I found interesting. So this Chaos Shuffle, I have been kind of struggling more than ever. I've always felt Chaos Shuffle leans towards the survivor side, and there's a couple of exceptions there. Like, if you're like an S tier killer, if you're like Blight or like Ghoul or Nurse or something like that, then it probably is actually even more killer sided because you can ensure everybody that you're trying to like tunnel out doesn't have DS off the record, multiple second chances and things like that. So getting people out of matches with those S tier killers is actually even stronger than base DBD. But basically everybody else, it's significantly weaker. And the reason has the same as it's always been, that a killer's perk is more important and impactful per perk than a survivor perk. For example, if one out of 16 perks for survivor ends up being useless or something like that, okay, that's 1 out of 16. That's a pretty big dilution of uselessness. If one of my killer perks is bad, that's 25% of all of my perks. So it's a huge difference just based on the amount of perks in the game. And statistically, it's more likely to go in the survivor's favor because they're just less reliant on perks in general. And frankly, just not having anything that's going to benefit you as a killer is far more detrimental than not having like an exhaustion perk is basically the equivalent, like the required perks you need on survivor. So it's always been like that. Chaos Shuffle, in my opinion, has always leaned slightly towards Survivor. And again, I realize it can feel not that way if you're going against one of those S tiers and you're getting tunneled out. Then yes, it's going to feel worse. But for the most part, on average, it's always felt Survivor-sided. This iteration of Chaos Shuffle, I'm getting my ass beat more than I ever have, and I think I know the main reason for that. One, I've been getting a strange grouping of like very good survivors lately, but for the most part, I think a simple tweak that they made with this Chaos Shuffle, which is making it so every survivor has an item every game, is doing way more damage than they actually think it might have, or it's having more of an impact. I can't say it's doing damage because I'm sure survivors love it, but previously you would have to bring your own items into Chaos Shuffle and it would consume it from your inventory. So every game wasn't always filled with 4 items because not everyone always wants to bring and lose a really good, toolbox or something like that every single game. But now, because there's absolutely no downside, you just simply pick an item class and get a random item of that kind. There's no downside. So every game you're seeing 4 toolboxes or medkits, like every single game. And very often you'll get a really good Commodious or a BNP or something like that. Medkits are less crazy than they used to be, which, thank God. So there's I've had people getting syringes left and right, but it's not as impactful anymore. But for the most part, survivors being guaranteed items every single game now means you're more likely to encounter a bunch of toolboxes with even just decent add-ons every single game, and that can make a drastic difference. I cannot tell you the difference between going against a team with no toolboxes and 4 toolboxes. Even if they're not all crazy Commodiouses, the 4 toolboxes is like the hardest thing to beat in the entire game. Your brain will explode with how fast generators can go when a team is playing well and they're all allowed to bring toolboxes. It's genuinely unfair, and the only reason the game is fair is because it's very rare. You very rarely see 4 people bring in toolboxes in a match because A, it's just not very exciting. Just, oh wow, the bar's going faster, that's fun. And B, because there are other things that they might want to bring in as well that are just like more interesting. But like I said, because this Chaos Shuffle now actually involves you just getting free items that are not removed from your inventory, we're just seeing a shit ton of items every single game. And yeah, I feel it. I feel like the gens are going faster. People are resetting faster. It just feels like it's been harder overall. But the point of this video is something that I realized while I was doing a self-imposed challenge for Chaos Shuffle. So I've been doing this challenge where I'm calling it like the value streak, where not only do I have to win, I have to get at least 3 kills, but I have to ensure that I get value from every single perk that I've actually been given. So you can see on my screen there, I've got like white outlines or white glows on top of the perks that I've actually used. And if I don't get value from every single perk that I was given, I lose still. Even if I kill everybody, I still lose. So that can be extremely challenging with when you get things like Devour Hope. I need to basically camp my totem, but also get enough stacks to benefit from it. So it can be really, really hard to try to force value from things that you're not going to get value from, especially when the perks are absolutely terrible. I got All Shaking Thunder on a map that has no hills, so I had to go in the basement and drop down onto the stairs just to get it active. Like, it makes it a lot harder, and it's been very interesting and incredibly challenging. My highest win streak is 5, which for a DBD content creator is not very high in terms of killer streak. So it's been kind of rough. I haven't been playing any of the S tiers. I've been playing like Nemesis and Wraith and things like that. But for the most part, it's been very, very hard. But I realized I had to make a rule for myself because I had to implement a rule that said, if I can't use the perk, I need to just give myself a free point there. Because if I get Shattered Hope, for example, which allows you to break boon totems permanently instead of just snuffing them, but no one has a boon totem, I physically cannot get value from the perk. It's impossible. So I would have to give myself that point for free because there's nothing I could do to do that. And I realized I was doing that for a lot of my perks. I was giving myself a free point like every single game, and I realized there are a shit ton of killer perks that are not up to the killer to use whatsoever, and that's the thing I actually found really frustrating. Things like a Nurse's Calling, for example. I can't force people to heal in my Terradius. Iron Maiden, I can't force people to get in the lockers. Force Penance, I can't force people to body block. Haywire, I can't force people to 99 negate. Like, there's so many perks in the game that are so frustrating to use because you don't use them. You wait for the survivors to let them use it. And that is, I realize that's my least favorite class of perk in the game. Perks that you don't actually get to control yourself. Now, you might think, oh, Survivor has some of that too. And they have a couple. And you might think they have more than they actually do, but they don't. Like, let me talk about Unbreakable. Unbreakable is an example. You might think, well, yeah, that's true. It's not up to me. I can't control when the killer decides to slug me or not. But you kind of can, actually. You can force the killer to slug you. Even in solo queue, you can run next to teammates and die under a pallet, and the killer is going to slug you. You actually do have control over these things. Whereas for the killer, I have no control over someone getting in a locker for Iron Maiden, for example. I cannot force a survivor to do that unless I'm like playing Bubba and they're trying to like dodge my chainsaw or something. That's like the only exception. But you can kind of like see the difference there. And basically, going forward, I would just really prefer if they make perks not like Haywire, for example, where it's not up to the survivor, or it's not up to the killer to choose to utilize that perk. It's up to the survivors to give you that perk, because it just feels immensely frustrating when you have a particular build or a setup or a vision in your head, and the only thing stopping the vision from happening is the survivors not letting you do the thing that you're trying to do. So I think that's more acceptable on the survivor side. And like I said, there's still way more of it on the killer side, but it's more acceptable on the survivor side because, like I said, tying it back to the beginning of the video here, if a survivor brings a perk that the killer must let them use, it's still not as impactful to the overall match if they're not able to actually use it, because like I said, that's just 1 out of 16 perks in the match. If the killer has a perk they're not allowed to use unless the survivors let them, that's 25% of the perks on that side. It's way more just statistically in the survivor's favor. So I really think killer perks in the future need to not be designed with the caveat that survivors control when they are used. There's a couple of exceptions, but overall, I think that's kind of a bad design, and I would like them to move away from it. Again, the most recent example we have is Haywire, and everyone agrees that perk is abysmal dog shit. It is terrible, because as soon as you try to 99 negate, you'll say, oh, it's going backwards. Let me just open it. Okay, cool. Like, what? You just don't even get to use it. So going forward, I would like to see more perks that do not have that design, and more perks that are just solely up to the killer when they want to use it. Like, for example, the new perk we're getting with Vecna the First, Henrico, whatever you want to call him, where you can just look at a generator and blow it up. That's the shit I like. You just choose when you want to do it. That's really nice. So more of that stuff, less of the Iron Maidens of the world, basically. That's it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.